Christian. Thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Well, I thought I would talk to you because you have kind of an unusual career in financial services. And I couldn't help but notice you are on the younger side, which I do think is a little unusual for, people who work in banking, especially at the C level. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into banking.
Yeah. Like most, it was complete accident. So I started a company in college, just the goal of helping college students save money, and going around pitching it, showing it to random people, ran into FIS and some other people in the banking industry.
You ran into a core provider the way most college students, kind of run into their pitch meetings.
It's always the most random connections you would expect that have it. So, but when you're taking 3-4 meetings a day trying to get it in front of whoever, it ends up happening. And they liked the idea. They thought it had some legs, so they invested in us and brought us out. We were in the very first venture center cohort back in 2016.
Wow.
So that's when they told us, hey, you're going to sell to banks now. And we said, okay, that sounds good. And so we learned that. I still remember vividly John Burmeister and Mark Morose from Live Oak Bank, like teaching us what a community bank is.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea. So built up that company, sold it in 2020, and just realized like it wasn't much technology focus inside of banking. And so decided to go work at Horicon Bank for a while, where I got to learn kind of the technology side with them, and then moved to Colony Bank a couple years later and just kept learning as much as I could.
So I imagine you're in college. Surely you have a bank account and you have a debit card. You might even have a credit card. What did you know about banks outside of your personal interaction with them?
Pretty much nothing. I had no idea. I mean, my family used a community bank,
Okay.
and so I had one, but I didn't know that was different from the big banks. I didn't know what the difference was. But yeah, I mean, my interaction, my knowledge of banking was, this is my banking app, and it stinks or it's good. And so when all the fintechs came with their cool apps, I migrated over to those in college. And then started learning more about community banks and all that once I started the company.
Yeah. And what's one fact that your colleagues don't know about you?
Man, I was a runner. I ran in college. My whole life used to be, now it's all banking. It used to be all running. So
you're not a runner still?
No, my body doesn't work anymore.
Oh, yeah. No, that's the thing about getting older, is you can't do the same things you did when you were in college.
You run 60, 70 miles a week for 10 years and you'll be surprised your body starts to hurt if you don't.
Oh, you're
do
a
it right.
distance runner. Okay. Okay. That's a different type of runner than I am. Okay. So you have this career where you're in college, you start selling to banks, and then you decide to join banks, and you joined specifically Horicon and Colony before you leave and join ImpactFI. So what did you learn about banks from working at one that you couldn't have understood when you were outside one, just a customer of one, or even selling to one?
It's so hard to explain it to people who have inside of a bank, but it is. And when I was doing the startup company, banks would tell me, well, you don't understand banking. Like, yes, you get the technology side. That's awesome. We trust you for that. It was never mean, but this is a much more, there's a lot to it. And they're right. I mean, I was in a bank, in one of the two banks for over 6 years, and I feel like a different person. Like it's not possible to really explain. Like, it's the psychology of banking. Like, bankers make decisions slightly differently than most people do. And you can kind of guess what that is, but it's, it's risk-based. They only have so many resources. I was very intentional about working with each group in the bank. I took teller training. I went into the branches and learned that. By the end, I was running merchant services, treasury, credit card, debit card. So I was doing my best to learn all the actual stuff inside of a bank. But the piece that's hard to explain is like the actual way that bankers think and
Yeah.
how decisions are made. And it changes the way your brain works when you do it as well. So um, it's a lot.
I do think that there is kind of an appreciation of the complexity of like the plumbing of banking. Like how does when I swipe my card, how does money come out of my account? And or when I get a check, how does it get added to my account? But then also, yeah, that mindset is something that I've really encountered, spending more time in the financial technology, the financial services outside of banking space to even explain, like, I've never worked at a bank, but to explain, like, oh, like, it's coming up a lot that what what is a deposit and like what kind of I kind of joke that it's like magic applied to the deposit, that like it functions for you as money, but for them it functions as like debt that they get to loan out, and that has actually certain legal protections and ramifications as insurance coverage. And so then when other things look like a deposit but aren't a deposit, you have
Mhm.
to you have to kind of articulate that like that's not this thing that you've grown up with, right? And so like even just adding that level of understanding to people to say like actually you've never had to think about what a deposit is in your life, except right now you need to understand that the thing, this crypto, this stable coin, not a deposit, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, I mean, and it gets deeper, like capital versus deposits. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's none of it. I don't know. The financial side of banking, I think, is legitimately complicated. But even like in the operations departments and in a credit card, like every little operations and business group inside of a bank, none of that is like particularly extremely complicated, but it does take like
Yeah.
real time to learn. Like there's specific regulations, there's things that don't pass the sniff test when you're doing it. Like
Yeah.
just because someone's been in banking forever, if you take them and put them in a different department, like they'll be completely lost.
Yeah.
They'll be able to learn quicker, but it's still like there's so much in banking. But it's fun to learn. Like I feel much more capable of doing, like if I wanted to go start a startup now,
Sure.
the me that's now looking back at the me that started the first company is like, how did he do any of it? That's
What did
not
he think he was doing?
just shooting in the dark and hoping.
So you joined these community bankers kind of in a technology capacity. You weren't kind of an intern doing the whole round of all the jobs. You were doing it so you could better understand the technology back end. What surprised you about how community banks were operating from that technological perspective?
Yeah, I came in understanding technology more than almost any banker. Like bankers aren't technologists typically, and nowadays they're getting better, which is great. But so it was nice being able to provide value that was unique. I was the only person in these banks at the start that really did what I did. But I could also play the role of, hey, I might be good at this, but I'm a complete newbie at all these other things. So I'm going to ask really dumb questions, and I'm not going to be scared to ask those really dumb questions. And so through that, I mean, you learn a lot. I think at
Yeah.
the very start, the biggest confusion, surprise, whatever it is, was just the core in general. Like
Oh my gosh,
understanding.
I'm imagining you learning what a core is.
Right. Coming from like the technology side, it was okay. We owned everything. We built it. We managed the
Yeah.
databases. Blah blah blah. And then you come and the bank is like, I have no idea how to like that's all that's over there. Like when we ask questions about, okay, well, how do you connect to this, and what does the database schema look like here? How can we tie into that? It was like you got to talk to this other company about that. Like we have no idea. That was surprising to us coming from that world. So, but also it gave us a huge advantage because we came into it and we dove into it. We learned like crazy. We were the
Right.
first fintech on FIS's Code Connect. We were the first fintech on Finastra's Fusion Fabric Cloud. So even though I'm young, I
Yeah.
remember when banks didn't do anything in the cloud. Like we
Yeah.
got away from companies. We got turned away from working with a big company because they were like, no bank is ever going to work with a company that's in the cloud. And then a year or two later, they took me to dinner and said, hey, so we're moving our company to the cloud.
I it's funny to reflect on. So right now, obviously, all the banks are really interested in AI, and to think about the technology cycles and yeah, the adoption of the cloud, because that it did both seem both inevitable, and then it like kind of took longer than maybe anyone would expect. And then you kind of lived that, and you got to see that like 180-degree change in attitude, right?
Yeah. And it was. I mean, it was legitimately within like a year or two that it went from not possible to, all right, we're doing it.
Yeah. So, what motivated you to leave community banking and join ImpactFI Advisors as a partner and chief innovation and strategy officer? And who do you work with now?
Yeah, so I mean, I really don't see it as leaving the industry.
Okay.
So I work with ImpactFi Advisors. What we do is negotiate core contracts, digital card, debit, credit card. So it's stuff that I did naturally at my last two roles, but what I get to focus on is working with all of our bank customers on their strategic plan, their innovation.
Okay.
So, um, so all of our customers that work with us get me for free, basically. So even though I don't work directly for a bank, there are multiple banks where I have like a ongoing multiple times a week meeting,
Yeah.
where we're working on here's the plan for the next 2 or 3 years. Here's the vendors we should go talk to. So
Sure.
I still I'm doing the same thing I did at the other two banks, just more focused and a little bit less. You know, it, banks can only handle so much innovation, like projects, whatever it is. So
Right. Right.
even my last two banks, 10 to 15, 20 hours, maybe a week was real innovation progress stuff. The
Sure.
rest was how can I spend my time helping the bank? And so that's where I got into the credit card treasury, all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah. So, one of the things I think we spend a lot of time thinking about is probably the relationship between community banks and then the companies that they get their technology from. And you mentioned, obviously, none of these banks are, or very few of the bankers are technologists. Also, none of the banks tend to own their technology or build their technology. How would you classify today the relationship between community banks and their tech vendors? What are they like? What kind of insights do you bring in that maybe the current management doesn't have?
Yeah, so that's multiple questions. I'm going to
Yeah,
try.
sorry.
In terms of the relationship directly with the vendors, I feel like the banks who are doing it well are using their vendors as advisors as much
Okay.
as technology. You work with the cores. The cores are great. Like we all want to hate on them, and there are things that I really hate about them, but ultimately, like these are behemoths that are running thousands of banks across the world. Like that's pretty impressive, but they're not able to be real advisors. Like, they're
Right.
able to give you
Right.
the technology. They tell you where to use it, what to use it. You're never going to use it to its full potential because of everything that's around it. These other fintechs that are coming in and nibbling off pieces of what the core does or
Yeah.
providing new kinds of services, that's all they focus on. And they are the best at it. Why else would you go start a company specifically focused on, whatever that feature is? They're experts at it. And so the best banks that I have seen that have the best relationships, yes, they're using the software, but they're the CEO or whoever it is of the fintech that they're connected to, they're using to understand this feature and how to use it
Right.
and other things or other ways to look at it. So I think that's how kind of the relationships are starting to evolve is banks are starting to feel more comfortable using a lot more. In terms of what I think I provide that's different is a little bit more of a holistic kind of view,
Yeah.
even I respect a lot of these fintechs so much, but there's a lot of times I'm talking to them and I'm like, yeah, but how, like for this bank specifically, it feels like this. And I'm like, no, you got to use this. And here's why. They understand their world so much that they can make their world work for anybody.
Sure.
But should it actually be?
Yeah.
is the question. So,
Yeah.
I was intentional in my time at banking to try and work for every single group in the bank and learn it
Hmm.
all. So I can kind of come at it from a, hey, let's go. What are the 1 to 2 to 3 projects that you can actually handle this year that would get you closest to your goal in 2 to 3 years? And then a lot of times with banks, what should the goal be for
Right.
in 2 to 3 years? So,
Yeah.
um, taking it from the very top level, and I can get down into the weeds very
Yeah.
quickly, to get there.
Well, and you mentioned that one of the relationship now is kind of like an advisor or a partner. Is that like would you say that that's kind of a new thing in banking or like a new way to approach these relationships as like maybe more collaborative or there's needs to be kind of some intellectual knowledge sharing versus just kind of like we go to the store, we buy the thing from the core store, plug it in, turn it on, and then give it to our customers?
I don't think it's really new. I mean,
Okay.
I've only been in the industry for 12 years now, maybe something like that. So my purview is only
Yeah.
the amount of time. But I remember, like, from the very beginning, Horicon Bank was one of my customers when I had my fintech,
Right.
and the CIO COO Mark Nelson, who's a very close friend, he would call me all the time with just,
Okay.
hey, how do we, we're thinking about this, I want to do this. So, like, I know there were some banks doing it that way, and I'm
Yeah.
sure they were doing it with their core. I know there's a lot of people that trust their account provider or salesperson, whoever it is, with their core for a lot of
Mhm.
questions. But I think now there's just more. There's so many more fintechs that are so much more specific.
Yeah.
That now I don't have one person I rely on for bank technology. I'm going to call this guy for stablecoin, this person for whatever.
Digital banking, like,
Yeah,
data management. Yeah.
yeah. So
I do think about how, to me, it was like if you got all of your stuff from your core, like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, you got all of your technology from your core, or that's where you first started. You would always start looking there. And you were making these choices based on how easy it was to connect to the core, um, and then now with the explosion of fintech, it's almost like you have to be a little bit more like an educated buyer, or you have to do more DIY, where the bank has to have a sense of best in class, or like, what would the integration with this thing, with this tech be to our core? And I think that's both good. It's good that the banks are looking outside of their core. There should be more robust competition. There are great technology partners. Um, Banks do not have to be limited by what their core offers. But at the same time, there's a lot of extra skill sets that can come from you, bank, deciding on your own to buy a product and then figuring out separately how to connect it, right?
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother section of. I mean, there's businesses that are built entirely around that. So
Right.
now that is mostly because the cores are not very easy to connect with, and
Sure.
they are all getting better. None of
Yeah.
them are great or perfect yet, um but it would be a lot easier if all the technology was built intentionally from the beginning with connectable APIs and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
If it was all in the cloud, if we all started in the cloud. Yeah.
right. So but like I said, they are getting better at it. I mean, at Colony Bank, we had our own middleware that we used with PortX, and we connected into a lot of our vendors without having to really stress about it. So it is a.
Well, and the other thing too is going back to this like DIY versus going to the core store, and you kind of mentioned it with the middleware, is that it becomes like kind of an infrastructure issue. You don't want to just kind of bolt on everything like directly or integrate directly. That's probably not. That might be again like a reasonable approach for one or two things. Maybe that was a reasonable approach in like 2019, but like that is not that's not going to be sustainable and or cheap or quick. And also there's like a fragility that can kind of come from so much like some of those connections, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's 100% true. It's there's no perfect answer. It's all kind of
Yeah.
what do you want to be limited, or do you want to have to manage more? And that's
Right.
pretty much what it comes down to.
So one of the things you mentioned in your role currently is negotiation of contracts. And I think this is so interesting because that seems like maybe one of the least innovative things you can do is negotiate your contract. Can you
Yep.
talk a little bit about why this is so important for banks as they think about, their technology strategy or their approach, or, I think what this ultimately comes down to, which is the budget.
Yeah. No, I mean, so one of the things that always kind of got under my skin was people saying, well, of course you could do what you did at Colony. You guys were a $3-4 billion bank. Like, that's easy. You have lots of money. No, that's not true. Like, we weren't just throwing
You have
millions
so
of
much money
dollars.
as a $3 billion bank.
Like, pretty much every project that I did without not including our digital banking, that was the one that we all kind of agreed we have to upgrade. We're losing customers.
Sure.
The ROI was there, but it wasn't paid for by something else. All the other stuff was pretty much paid for by, okay, let's get rid of this vendor, or let's negotiate and let's provide more value to them so they give us a better price.
Okay.
Like, core negotiations, any kind of technology negotiation, it isn't just come on, you can give us less, like to charge us less. Come on. It's very much a, hey, here's how we can provide value by being a unique customer. We know we're your third bank. We know you've got lots of credit unions. So we're happy to be a reference, and we'll help you understand the banking side, whatever it is. Like
Sure.
there's other things that you can give them, but it's always about how can you free up money to make this less risky? Because banks are in the business of risk. So
Okay.
if I have to say, hey, I'm going to go work with this vendor and it costs $150,000 a year, okay, well, that's a pretty big risk depending on the size of your bank.
Yeah.
Now, if I can say, hey, I'm actually going to cut back on this vendor and save $75,000 because this new vendor does that, well, now your risk is much less. So I think it's kind of the first step in really being able to do something innovative is freeing up budget and thinking about things in a different way.
Yeah.
Online account opening isn't terribly innovative. There's plenty of companies that are doing it. Now, there are some that do it really, really well.
Sure.
And they've been around and they're, pricey in my mind. But there's new vendors that are coming up. I've got a couple customers. If you really want to get into online account opening, but you can't afford $200,000 a year, whatever the price is, find one of these ones that has 5 customers that's looking to grow. They'll charge you $75,000 a year. You can save money by cutting something out of your core contract. And now that's basically a free test to go do something. So that's the way that we look at it. Is we're not just trying to save money. We start with your strategic plan. What are you trying to do in the next 2 to 3 years? What things are you saying we're absolutely getting rid of this in the core and we want to upgrade this? And then, okay, let's start looking at those potential opportunities, negotiate outs in a year or two with these. And it just takes all the risk out. Banks understand it, and you're able to do a lot more innovative things.
I mean, it's funny because what I hear is like, one, you kind of have to know what your tech stack is, or like what products and services you offer and who they come from. And then you have to decide, like, do we want this thing? Can we fully cut this service? Or like, do we need something that's best in class, or can we get something that's like pretty good, that's cheaper? Or can we, this came up once that's like, like, I don't know, Microsoft is a big vendor, right? Could you buy, if you already have a contract from Microsoft, could you add, I don't know, cloud from Microsoft versus buying a separate cloud storage from another vendor? And then you would just like increase the value of that contract, but it would be less than the two things separately. And it was like so basic. And I think maybe people have to manage their personal finances like that a little bit, like kind of shop your pantry, or, do look at your streaming services and see what you get. But it really surprised me, because it's kind of like that discipline that comes from just one, being in control and having a sense of your entire organization, but then also understanding, like, if you don't do this in like several years from now, you won't have any room in your tech budget, right? Or you won't be able to add different technology because you're like 100% already committed to these contracts of tech that was maybe more relevant 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, I could talk on this for hours just because it's. I remember I got asked one time, like, okay, we want to get into data. Give us a full plan, budget, everything. And it's like, if we're doing this right, you're spending millions of dollars. Like that, it doesn't make sense to go from 0 to 100.
Sure.
So instead, what we did was, what are the top use cases that we really want to get into? How can we kind of prove out this and start building the data muscle without trying to go and build a huge Snowflake database and all these connectors and everything? Like, that's a big undertaking, especially when you don't have the staff for it. Like, you got to take steps. So, and that's what we did. We built out we have a data warehouse that's already kind of available. Let's put more data into it. Build into these 3 use cases that we've been wanting to do. And slowly we built the muscle, we built the team, and it got way easier. And then at some point you say, look, moving from here to the ultimate vision, much cheaper. We now understand it fully. We would have made 10 mistakes if we would have gone straight to it. So it's okay to not get the number one top best option every single time.
Well, and your comment about that story kind of reminds me, like, would you say most traditional community banks, most legacy community banks have a technology strategy? And if they do have one, or like whatever they think they have, what's in that tech strategy?
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
like, how do you define tech strategy if they don't have a tech strategy?
I mean, that's the problem that I run into a lot is I talk to banks and they say, we're going to get more innovative. We're going to start using technology. We're going to do this, that. And they all kind of say the same thing. We're going to get a new digital. We're going to get online
Yeah.
accounting. Um, but then the question I always ask is why? Like, why are you doing it? What are you trying to get to? Is it just because you feel like you're falling behind and you want flashier technology? And you'd be amazed. Almost, I've never had a bank give me an immediate answer of, well, here's our strategic plan. We want to add treasury capabilities and do this because we're going to target this industry. And like,
Yeah.
that's never happened.
Okay.
Now, maybe it's because I catch them off guard and they're not ready for it. But so that's why I always like to take a step back and ask, what are the goals for the bank? Like, are we going to try to sell in 3 to 5 years? And so we're just trying to build this up, or our goal is to stay independent.
Yeah.
We have this advantage in this industry, so we want to target this industry more. And so in order to target this industry, they like these couple of capabilities, and we can't do that with our current provider. So we're going to go get this provider to do that. Like, that's the steps that need to happen,
Right.
not only for you to become innovative or technology modern, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
but in order to feel confident about it. Like, if you go to the board and say, we're trying to do it, it's going to cost this much, where's the ROI come from?
Yeah.
Whenever I have that path, I can tell you exactly where it comes from. We've got 50 customers like this. We can expand our relationship with them, and our market for these kinds of customers is thousands of them. So we're going to hire a person that does this and go after them, and now we've got the technology to do it. So that's how I like to build a strategic plan, is understand what do you want to look like in 3 years? What do you
Right.
want to do when you grow up? And
Yeah.
then let's take the steps backward to say, okay, well, if we just put in this one online account opening tool
Yep.
that has the ability to ask additional questions outside the normal thing, now we've got a unique front end.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's as simple as we just need to put up a new page on our website that lets us start scoring for search engine optimization for this industry, or whatever it
Sure.
is.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's the smallest things that have the biggest difference.
It's funny you keep saying a phrase that I don't think comes up a lot in technology, which is ROI. Um, and so, in addition to sometimes I think the difficulty of articulating why do we think our strategy would be best executed with this technology or this tool, um, it also, my impression, and this was something that I learned at my previous employer, which is banks are not really measuring the ROI of their products or their tech spend. And it kind of comes from like, there's like a confluence of like, they just don't really they don't calculate the cost or benefit of their current process, which means
Yeah.
that if you don't have that number, it's really hard to figure out like what the ROI is of making this investment and then the savings or the increased revenue. So can you talk a little bit about discussing ROI on tech spend with clients?
Yeah. I mean, that came to me uh, because I kind of had to. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like uh, I meet a lot of people who are technology focused, more innovative sides in a bank, but they're, a couple rungs down from decision making
Uh-huh.
capabilities. Um, and so they always say, yeah, like, this is so obvious. We need to do this. We need to do that. And we're on the same page. We're talking the same stuff. The difference between being successful with it and your bank adopting it and everything, and you just always saying, we got to do this, is that communication in between. How do you get leadership to understand this is why we're doing it? And it goes back, banks are in the business of risk. And once you understand that and you can figure out, what are you concerned about? Why
Yeah.
are you concerned that we're not going to make enough money? Are you concerned that there's regulatory issues? If you can check those boxes off, then it makes it to where why wouldn't they say yes?
Yeah.
So I would never go to a bank where the CEO wasn't saying, we want to get more innovative. We're going to focus on technology. Because if the CEO is trying to kill it, it's never going to happen.
Right.
But
Right.
assuming your CEO is saying, we want to do it. We just got to figure out to do it the right way and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Then the conversation comes, how do I speak your language? Let's figure out, how do I make it such a no-brainer that you would feel irresponsible
Mm,
as a CEO, as a person on the board, to say no to this. As soon as you think about it that way and you put yourself in the CEO's role, then it's okay, I've got this vendor coming in. This is why I think we need to do it. We're going to
yeah.
make money this way. We're going to save money this way. If you can lay out the assumptions that make it to where your ROI is such an obvious thing, and your CEO can wrap their head fully around those assumptions, then they'd be crazy to say no. And so that's kind of, like I said, I started focusing on ROI out of necessity.
Right.
Um, Now it just seems like such an obvious. Like I said, all the time, I'll talk to people that say that they can't get something through, and it's, well, let's sit down and let's go through the math and make it
I
make
th-
sense.
I think the tech survey that we first asked that question in at my old job, it was like 2/3 of respondents who, and the people who took the survey were some of the tech roles, but a lot of boards of directors and CEOs. They did not measure ROI, and I was like, I don't know, like maybe start. And it's funny because it was like several years ago, and AI is really going to only supercharge this, and I feel like um, the perception of productivity gains and efficiency gains in AI makes it a little bit easier actually to understand why do we care about measuring return on investment, right? Like if we think we're gonna maybe ultimately hire fewer people to do more work because of some productivity gains, okay, well, let's like take that mentality and ask ourselves, are we getting ROI out of our current tech spend? Is there a way we could change our relationship to that vendor, those products and services, to get more ROI, or do we need to reevaluate and try
Mm,
to cut that cost and apply it somewhere else where we think we're going to get more bang
yeah,
for our buck?
yeah. I mean, it's the next step is, are you actually tracking that after you've signed the contract and implemented?
Right. And then following through. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So everyone is talking about AI in banking. What's your honest take about AI at community banks? Kind of their like readiness to do it, where it makes sense, turn it on immediately right now, and where like stay away, or you really need to grow in some sophistication before you activate it here.
So one thing else, I've been amazed at how many community banks are actually doing a lot with AI.
Right?
Now, it's not that they've got a perfect AI strategy and they're all implementing on it, but most banks that I talk to are like, "Hey, we've turned on Copilot and we're playing with it." How active are they with it? What are they like? That's different, but still, that's the first step. Is just, is my team playing with it? Are they using it? Um, I think, in my mind, the first steps I would take is always the same thing. How do you, what's the plan? Why do we want to do this?
Yeah.
Efficiency is kind of the easiest thing to get out of AI, and, saving time. Like, the credit department has so many things that they're writing, that they're going through. If you're able to throw in all your information and have it spit out a credit memo pretty quickly that you can quickly skim over, like, that
Yep.
saves you 20-30 minutes depending on the person. um, Things like, hey, here's all the formation documents for this company, who has the right to sign? And a lot of times you'll find issues there, you'll find
Yep.
the right answer, like, those are things that our credit departments are reading through all of it, they're looking for it, they're trying to find it. So um, there's little efficiencies like that. The big thing that I say is, do like a training session.
Yeah.
Daniel Rentz at Colony Bank did
Okay.
such a good one, where it was just, let's start with, what are your hobbies? Let's just play around with, hey, if you like to garden, just ask it the question that you would typically Google, or that you would be thinking through in your head. Hey,
Yeah.
this is where I live. I love these kinds of vegetables and fruits. I've got this much space. Can you help me plan this out? Okay, now give me
Okay.
a maintenance plan for it. And once those are the kinds of things that when you're using, it's like, oh, holy cow, I can do a lot with this.
Yeah.
Then you split it into, okay, now think about your department, or here's some of the problems that we're doing. Do the same thing. Hey, I've got to write credit memos. They take me forever. This is all the data that I put into it. What would be a good plan to work with you on? And then try to automate. Okay, here's the prompts that I would need to use every time, and the stuff that I need to plug into it. and then give it to your whole credit team. Hey, copy and paste this into it. And there's agents and things you can do to automate all that. But the easiest way to do it is, hey, here's a shared resource, copy and paste the prompt, throw in the documents, and then do it.
Yeah.
That'll save you hours and hours and get your mind wrapped around what AI is capable of. And then, there's the more in-depth stuff where you're actually building agents to automate processes and all that. But AI is obviously there's going to change everything. So just
it's interesting because I do think there's I was just reflecting on this with someone that going back to our conversation about cloud, right? And like the turn between nothing will ever be on the cloud to everything's going to be on the cloud. Nothing's ever going to be on-prem ever again. AI, I feel like, went from and it's weird because like there was like RPA, machine learning, and I felt like banks those were kind of hard for banks to do. They were hard to do with their current data. And then generative came in, and I think that was very interesting, but also like kind of scary. And then I don't know like what happened, but like in 18 months, banks were like, oh, I'm actually just going to build everything. And I do think, like, to your point, there's still actually some really low hanging fruit in banks. There's so many manual processes. There's so much documentation that needs to be created. There's so much data that needs to be turned into narrative that, there's some applications where it's not the sexiest use case, but it's like kind of a repetitive task that takes like, I don't know, 30 minutes to 3 hours and you can use AI there and get like I don't know, it's not going to like probably change the world, but like it'll free up some time. It'll make a job like something that's very tedious, a little bit less tedious. And then but then to kind of learn from there and then be like, well, and could an agent do this fully? And then where would we need human review, right?
There's just so much. I think the greatest thing I've gotten from AI is just that like opening, and I could, this is conceptual. So
go there.
It's opening my own synapses, how you pronounce it. Because I'm asking different questions of it. I'm using it to like do stuff. And I know a lot of people are saying that they're just relying on AI and people are actually getting dumber. I feel like it's helped me to think about it from different ways when you use it as a thought partner. So
interesting.
One of my friends said, and it's some meme or something, but it said, I love AI. It's helped me be so much more efficient. It's turned my 8-hour workday into a 14-hour workday.
Yeah, you're so much more productive now, unfortunately.
Because I'm spending you're actually working more, I feel like, because I'm spending an extra hours and hours every night just playing with AI and testing stuff out. So,
That's funny. I will say that I have so much content, right? Like I have so many notes, so many ideas, so many like links. Like I just have so many links, right?
Yep.
And I have like this a pitch document of like just different story ideas, and they're not always going to work because stuff's not in the news, not topical. But I like copied and pasted that document into Claude, and I was like, find 5 ideas from this like 14-page list of ideas and links and whatever that are extremely topical for the month of April.
Right.
Then out of those pitches, find all the news, find the speeches, find the press releases that would go into it, and then write those ideas as like, not just like a 1 or 2 sentences, write it as a pitch, and then I also uploaded my source spreadsheet, and I was like, go through my spreadsheet, find who I should talk to from that spreadsheet and put them into the pitches. And then, so it like came up with like 5 pitches, and it was funny because like, one of the pitches it identified was like actually a story that I had just written. So I was like, well, like, I guess I was right. Like, but it was kind of useful because like the issue is like, there's like this hurdle for me to be like, oh my God, I've never had an idea in my life. Who am I going to talk to? I've never talked to anyone in my life. I can't even begin to do this work. But when it just was like, hey, Kiah, here's like all these different parts of your brain that you put down on a piece of paper, and I just connected them for you. And all you have to do is just email them. Like maybe the next thing it'll do is like, now email those people for me. Make it sound like it came from me, attach my calendar link. Like, I want to run the story by X, Y, and Z date. Like, And then
Yeah,
I'll come in
it's
only at the end and I'll be like, wait, what are we talking about?
yeah. I hate that people are using AI to write content, but I love exactly what you're saying.
I
Like
know.
I
So
I
stupid.
I I hate like writing. I'm terrible at organizing my thoughts.
Sure.
And so my favorite thing in the world to do is pull up my Claude app and just turn it on to talk mode and it's you're talking to someone and I just
Oh,
blast
interesting.
for minutes just like I mean one of the things I'll read through a bank's like strategic plan or their
Oh, and then you put your notes, you like talk about it, your thoughts.
their
Yeah.
UBPR, their financials, whatever, and I say, okay, here's what I think is interesting. This number is high, this is low,
Yep.
and tying it to the plan. If they were to do this and this and that,
Yep.
I mean, I just have it. I like just organize these into because I'll be talking and then like 5 minutes later, oh, yeah, also on this point, I need to do that. And it just cleans it all up. And it's like, this is exactly what I was thinking. It didn't
Yeah.
add any new information.
Yeah.
It
It
just
just
now
also didn't
makes
make it look like you are an idiot
right.
who is like coming up with random thoughts. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then I use that to actually now form how I'm going to communicate it and,
Totally.
on presentation, whatever it is.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about why banks should be very thoughtful about their technology strategy and why it's actually really hard. But there's a lot of banks and there's a lot of small banks who maybe feel like the right action for them is to wait on some stuff or that like everything's good and this is not something they need to like kind of keep doing or keep investing in. From your perspective, what happens to a community bank that doesn't have a strong, a realistic, or an adequately funded tech strategy over time?
I mean, they get bought like that. Like I love community banks. Like I would not be in this industry if it
Yeah.
was me believing in community banks. There's so much more money in other industries. Go
It's
to
a
a
lot
big
of work. There's a lot of there's easier jobs in other industries.
exactly. Yeah, and even going upstream to bigger banks like that you similar stuff, but but you get paid more and all that. But I genuinely believe in what community banks do. I don't think America is what America is without that. So uh,
Sure.
the problem is that right now their plan is working because they're able to pay their people and survive. And for the longest time, the growth and their competition was so small. So they're thinking, we've
Right.
been this for over 100 years. There's no way this is going to change it. But it is. I mean, and that's what's
Yeah.
happening. If you look at all the data, money is pouring out of community banks. Like
Yeah.
we're shrinking dramatically and we're selling because of that. And if you looked at trends rather than just looking at yourself, you would realize, I mean, I- even when you not giving up anything, but like just look at your stuff in your own bank.
Yeah.
You'll notice you're not growing terribly quickly naturally
Hmm.
for the ones that are just sitting there and
Yeah.
not adding technology. There are plenty that are because they're being intentional and market stuff happens that are beneficial to them. But the majority of banks, their actual deposits that are core deposits are shrinking and they're
Yeah.
going to fintechs, they're going to national banks. They're going to national banks more than anything.
Or they're
So
not like if they're not shrinking, they're not growing.
yeah,
So they kind of don't understand that they're losing out on that future growth or the future growth or the growth that they have is below peer growth or below
mhm,
market growth.
yeah. And the other thing is just like flexibility. Like when you have the technology, you can transition your business model when needed.
Yeah.
The good thing and bad thing about banking is a lot of our money and stuff comes or is very much touched against the regulatory stuff. If a law
Yeah.
changes, our revenue goes down dramatically. So
Right.
you need to be able to be a little bit more flexible on revenue opportunities and things like that. So yeah, I mean, what I think could happen isn't a thought. It's literally what's happening. Like
Yeah.
banks are getting acquired left and right and money is leaving.
Well, and I think a lot about how, especially when you mentioned, the bank that's 100 years old, um, the benefit of that is you have legacy profitability. You have legacy customers. You don't necessarily have to go out and you're having the knife fights to get customer business. But, the question is are you making all your money from customers you've had for 10 years? And what would happen if you kind of lost those customers or that there was like a succession plan and the next generation of leadership wanted to go to, kind of a fintech, a business focused
Mhm.
fintech. And And I think a little bit about that, like, can banks afford to invest in the technology that will keep that customer for their next generation of business? Or are you assuming that, your legacy commercial customer or your legacy, the retail customer you've had for 50 years, are you assuming that the next generation will also stay with you?
Mhm.
And I think there are some banks, in places that have some demographic challenges, they have more 90-year-old customers than 19-year-old customers, right? And that's not a recipe for growth, right? One
Mm.
customer, like if your biggest risk is customer attrition through death or retirement or succession handovers, and like the strategy is that's just never going to happen, like that, that's hard because you're not really setting your bank up for that next phase of growth, just even from like generational growth, right?
Yeah. It's all about what is your advantage and how can you lean into that advantage. Like a general 19-year-old has very low needs, but if they're in your community and you've got like, how can you be the best if they're
Yeah.
going to a college somewhere else? Like, it's going to be a struggle. So how can
Yeah.
is your digital experience good enough for them being gone? Like, maybe not. You might not get those customers, and that's fine.
Right.
If you really understand what you're good at,
Hmm.
then lean into it. Like
Yeah.
right now, most community banks have survived, like you said, on these individuals that have a good bit of money because they're older and they've retired and they've maybe been wise. Um, but that person, that the money, where that money is going after
Yep.
that person passes, is probably not where you're currently focusing. So
Right.
I mean, none of that is unique thoughts. That's what a lot of banks.
No, no.
It's just nobody's really acting on it.
So ImpactFi also invests in bank technology. What kind of problems or solutions is the firm interested in from that investment perspective? And then what are your thoughts on tech valuations in general?
Yeah. So ImpactFi technically itself doesn't invest. We have
Okay,
a
sorry.
separate
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's the investment
called,
vehicle?
called the Perch Fund. It's a
Okay.
similar team though. Um, and yeah, I mean, our whole focus is just, it is what I've learned is banks they struggle to trust. And so once a fintech company has gotten to a point where it's almost like a bank is allowed to use this fintech company,
Yeah.
they've got 5 customers, they're live, they've integrated with all the cores, the customers that they have love the product. Like
Yeah.
once you hit that, then that next phase is 10 times easier than that first phase. However, they typically are coming out of, okay, we've spent a lot of money to build it, to do it. That's where the valuations, assuming that they're fair, are best for my group, because
Okay.
I can personally help them find 5 to 10 new customers if I believe they're solving a unique problem.
Hmm.
That's where I just think that that's where my specialty is, I would say. And
Yeah.
investing is, I prefer people who have founded a company before in the banking space and have
Okay.
sold it. Coming from personal experience, I don't know if I would have invested in myself in this company, but if I was to start a company today, I would immediately invest in it. So
Yeah.
there's just an advantage. Like I'm a banker, so I want
Yeah.
to do things. How to if they have those experience. So the problems I like that their people are solving are like problems that are unique to community banks.
Okay.
Sometimes that's not going to be the case, but if there's a problem that I'm like, oh no, nobody knows about this, but it's such a pain for me because I was
Yeah.
in the community bank and
Yeah.
I knew all my friends had this pain, but there's probably not going to be 15 of these companies because who in the world is thinking about this one unique problem that I had?
Mm-hmm.
If they have it, there's a big enough market for it. They don't think that they're worth 50 million, even though they've only got 5 customers. Like,
Yep.
um, that's the kind of company that I'm looking for, and just people I like work. Like the 3 investments that I have, I would hang out with each of those CEOs like for weeks. Just
Yeah.
so I think I'm having a blast with it. That's one of
Yeah.
my things that I'm doing because we're providing real value. Every one of those companies has like we haven't been doing it for long, but they've all grown like crazy. So
Well, and you've kind of been on all sides of it, right? As the founder who has to like who understands like, how important these investments are, but also how important that market fit is. And
Mhm.
then working at the bank and being like, I have this problem. And it's like my life would be so much easier if someone just solved this problem for me.
Yeah.
And then now being on the kind of consultant side and being able to bring everyone together, but also being like, no, I can kind of tell when someone's like BSing me, or I can kind of tell when something's like vanity, like a vanity solution, or like something that's like really zeitgeisty and trendy versus something
Mhm.
that's like will make someone's life better, is a really great market fit, right? And then also, hopefully the valuations aren't crazy in that space, you know?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm not going after like, oh, these are billion-dollar companies, like
Right.
I'm going for very niche specific things. I kind of give myself this is where I think they'll sell. This is if great things happen.
Yeah.
This is worst case. And our numbers aren't ever in the billions. Like we're
Yeah.
talking, I think this company is going to sell worst case scenario $50 million. Um, and if I'm investing at 6 million pre, okay,
Right.
that's a great return. And
Yeah.
even though that's not the home run that a lot of these venture groups are looking for,
Sure.
I get to be involved in a company I believe in. There's a huge opportunity for return. Um, and all of our investors in the fund are like individuals in the industry. So they're
Yes.
other bankers, they're fintech CEOs, they're salespeople.
Hmm.
So it's people that also believe in all this kind of stuff. And that's why it's called the Perch Fund. We got a bunch of
Oh,
little it's a bunch of little
yeah.
birdies around the industry that have all this knowledge and understanding of the industry. We all come back to the perch, and now we're making our own investments and decisions. So,
So, my final question for you is, what's one piece of advice that you find yourself repeating to clients, either because it's really important, or because no one takes your advice?
the funny addition there. I mean, I give a bunch of advice. I don't know how much of it is great, but the main thing that I always say it is just it. What do you want to look like in 2 to 3 years? Like
Sure.
that. It's not even advice. It's just kind of a credo that I have. Is so many banks tell me we want to do this, we want to do that, we're going to do this. This is why we brought this person on. But if you don't know to what end, then
Yeah.
it's going to fail, or maybe you're going to succeed. I don't know. If you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up there. Like
Yeah.
that's what the Yogi Berra quote is. It's there's as soon as you really wrap your head around, I want us to look like this in 3 years.
Yeah.
Every decision, every purchase, every hire, it all falls into place so much quicker. You're confident, you're able to communicate better. Um, and so few banks they do
Yeah.
their general planning of we want to have this many deposits and we want to do nobody cares. You're not going to just magically get that many deposits. What does your bank actually look like?
Yeah.
You can start with, hey, we need more deposits
Yeah.
and we need this, but what are you going to look like? How is that going to happen? Um, as soon as you do that, like it's life gets way easier.
I totally agree with that advice. I actually used to say, I mean, I kind of still say, but now I'm a grown up. But in college, I used to be like, the person I want to be when I'm older is,
Yeah.
um, and like kind of worked my life towards that. And like it's interesting the ways that it changed. Like I really
Mhm.
thought that I was gonna work in New York, and I really thought I was gonna be like a type of person who wore like high heels, like a la Carrie Bradshaw and stuff.
Mhm.
But and that's not who I am anymore. But like the things that I said I wanted to do in college and the ways that I wanted my life to look like are the ways that my life looks like today. And it is, I didn't realize like not everyone thinks like that,
Yeah.
especially when they're in college, and kind of works backwards from that. But I
Right.
totally agree with that. And it's funny that what kind of works at the individual level it's not like it's not less applicable to
Mhm.
an institution as well, right?
Yeah. No, I mean it absolutely. And like you said, I mean things will change. Like you're
Yeah.
going to get opportunities or things are going to change in the industry and it's going to make it to where that plan doesn't work anymore, but you get together and you rethink it through
Yep.
and okay, well now we're 10 steps ahead. So now what do we want to look like?
Yeah.
And that might look completely different than what we thought we wanted to look like, but we got to have a plan.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today and chatting about this with me. I think it's a really important topic for banks. It's really hard for them to kind of articulate and shape the whole issue. So I'm glad that we got your insights.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was fun.